Hey friends, I'm so excited to see you all again, and today we are here to discuss manual mode. So far we have seen the P mode, TV mode, AV mode, semi-automatic mode. Today let's move towards the ultimate mode of camera, that's manual mode. So what's manual mode? Let me give you an example. If you have ever observed electricity, phase, neutral, earth, and if you know where to connect exactly which terminal, that is going to work the way you want. Imagine if you don't know where to connect and you connected it wrong. You are going to blow up everything. Manual mode is something similar to that. Everything is under your control. We have shutter speed, aperture, ISO. These three things are ultimately under your control to control the exposure. Now, if you don't do it right, you are not going to get the result because camera is not going to do anything for you. But if you do it right, you are going to get exactly what you want. How to work on manual mode? Let me share with you a simple workflow. This will be a really helpful tip for you to start with manual mode. First, observe the subject. Is the subject stationary or moving? Shutter speed should be decided based on that. You want to capture the motion or you want to freeze the motion, how much of motion you wanted to capture. All this motion related, freezing related technicality comes in shutter speed. So first you decide that by observing the subject. Second, how much of depth of field do you need? Do you want more depth of field, less depth of field? What's in the background? Do you want that to be clear or not? Based on that, you decide the aperture. Third, start the ISO from bare minimum, and if you are not able to control the exposure, increase it slightly. As you increase ISO, you start getting noise. So the third thing which you need to control is ISO, gradual increment. So we will do a practical example with manual mode. We have some bunch of flowers and I am going to click this particular flower with this setting 1/20 f4 ISO 100, and if you observe, you can see that the exposure dial is towards the negative side, meaning this picture is going to be a little underexposed. But anyway, let's try. Look at this picture. We got this picture slightly underexposed at this setting 1/20 f4 ISO 100, and since this is underexposed, we have the possibility of bringing to optimum or the right exposure by controlling any three. There is no exposure compensation automatically done by the camera in manual mode. You have to do it manually. So to make it a little more brighter, let me change the shutter speed to 1/10. Look at this image. It got a little more brighter by reducing the shutter speed. Now we got this image pretty decent exposure at 1/10, but right now these flowers are stationary. Imagine if you are shooting this same flower in the wind, and what's going to happen? Let's check that out. Observe this picture now. A little of wind, little movement created a motion blur. Now, if you want to correct this, we have to increase the shutter speed. Now, if you increase the shutter speed, we are going to have less light. Then we will work on aperture. Let's do that. So we will increase the shutter speed now to 1/50, and we will adjust the aperture a little more wider so that we will be able to get a proper exposure. Movement again, and even at 1/50, we are not able to freeze that motion. Still it is giving us the motion blur, and we have used the maximum available widest aperture in this lens, 1.8. What's the third option for us? Increase the ISO and correspondingly increase the shutter speed so that we will be able to freeze it. Let's do that. So we will make the shutter speed to 1/200, and the next option for us to increase the ISO. So let's move the ISO to ISO 800. And let's create the movement. Now observe this picture. 1/200, 1.8, ISO 800. We are able to get the clear picture of these flowers under the wind. Example, if it was under wind and if there is a movement. This is how you need to control your shutter speed, aperture and ISO in a particular situation. Please note, there is no compensation, exposure compensation in manual mode, but there is a compromise. What is that? As a photographer, you want everything perfect. You want to have a particular shutter speed, aperture and ISO. But all this decision comes to you based on only one factor, the major factor, light, available light. Sometimes we wanted to have a particular shutter speed, but we are not able to do that because the light is less. We wanted to have a particular aperture and we are not able to get that depth of field because we don't have sufficient light. Compromising all this, we will increase the ISO and that brings noise. Every time this jugglery of three elements, shutter speed, aperture and ISO, depending on light, the photographer has to work on these three factors to bring the best possible output. That calls in the expertise in you as a photographer, which one to be compromised based on the situation of light. Keeping these points in mind, we are going to have a really challenging lighting situation, and in manual mode, how we are going to overcome that situation and create a stunning picture. This is what we are going to do in the next episode. Stay tuned and I will see you there. Till then, take care guys. Goodbye.